Hi, everyone, and very warm welcome to another inspiring interview that I'm very happy to bring to you. Today, it is with Julian Saipe. Hello, Julian. Thank you very much for joining me today. And with Julian, we're going to be talking today about a topic that is very close to my heart as a former leader in a corporation where I led a few teams in different countries and different continents. And that is, we are going to be talking about leadership. And to be very precise, we're going to talk about conscious leadership, particularly today in the era of Great Resignation and obviously post-pandemic situation that we are all going through. The question of being a conscious leader or leading through a conscious leadership, in my opinion, is extremely important. So I'm very glad to be talking to Julian. We connected, we had a little chit chat, and as I say, I got very inspired. So once again, Julian, very warm welcome. I do have a little cheat sheet in here to introduce you, if you're okay with that. And then after that, I will pass over to you so that we can start the conversation. So Julian is a former entrepreneur and business leader who came into coaching after the acquisition of his hospitality business he founded in 2003. That's what we have in common because my background is hospitality business as well. Today, Julian coaches CEOs and executive board members. He also runs leadership programs internationally, teaches coaching as a leadership style, and that's what we're going to be talking about today, coaching as a leadership style, and also publishes regularly in Forbes magazine. Julian obviously has his coaching practice and is also an investor and advisory board member. So today we're going to be the topic to be exactly precise, is what does it mean to shift from charismatic to conscious leadership? And how does it look like in a day-to-day life? So if anybody would like to read that article as well that we're going to be talking about, you can find it in this little beautiful quarterly edition of Developing Leaders, where this is the latest edition that came up for this quarter. So loads of great articles, and Julian and Mimi, his partner, publishing their article about going from the charismatic to conscious leader. Julian, welcome. Please tell me or tell us what brought you into talking about conscious leadership, living conscious leadership. What is your personal story and the background?
Thank you, Michaela. Thank you for having me. Thank you for the warm introduction. There's a whole sort of backstory to where I am today and the work I do, and to simplify it, because it's a long story, it's really an outcome of my own struggle. Despite my success as an entrepreneur, my own struggle with what I understood was as what we call personality. And how through developing myself as a coach, learning to unlearn the things that stood in my way. And I think as we unlearn our conditioning, what emerges is our true nature. And our true nature is part of consciousness. It's just our human beingness, to be present, to listen, to sense, to be attuned to what is. And those are all really, for me, the ingredients of what we call conscious leadership, because let's remember the conscious leadership it's just a label. It's not something we do. Or it's not something to aspire to. It's a sort of returning to one's true nature, and that process for me was an unlearning process. Actually, when we stop doing the things that stand in our way, we realize who we are.
Yeah, beautiful. And in there, I think so many of us can relate to that kind of story. You were talking about your struggles there. I have a very similar path. When a lot of my audience knows about my struggles with anxiety, work-related anxiety, when I got really, really heavy anxieties, panic attacks. And that is exactly what you're talking about when it comes to unlearning what we so hardly learned. You know, we put so much effort into learning to be successful in our corporate organizations and in our working lives, only to find out that it's not really bringing us the success that we thought we were going to get by getting somewhere. And this is where I got all the success that I got. Success brought me to my anxieties. And this is, from what I'm understanding, is your similar situation. And so many people listening to this are in the similar situation. So let's talk a little bit about, you mentioned a word, personality. Let's talk a little bit about what does it mean when you talk about personality in the today's kind of conventional way of being a leader, and you're talking about being a charismatic leader. Where does the personality, what role does it play? What does it mean?
So let's think of the word charismatic as, let's talk about being a character.
Yeah.
Who is the character I need to be to sort of cut through?
Yeah.
So in this aspiring to be successful, to be something, I have to play to this character that I somehow have the power to develop to become this idea of myself in the future. So as the entrepreneur, if I am incredibly charming and win the hearts and minds of my audience and my clients, then being Mr. Charming is going to be my success tool. And when it works, because it does to a certain extent, I get very excited about that. It's very seductive. I kind of think, oh, this is my conceptual identity. I kind of create this identity of the thing that's going to allow me to cut through. Now this is driven. They're sort of unconscious drivers here that are driving this attachment to conceptual identity, and that is an old deficit of I am not enough, or I am not something not quite right. But when I discover this future possibility of success and how I'm going to get there, all will be so we become the striver of this sort of completed self that we somehow have told ourselves we are not. And so I play very hard to this idea of myself that will make me successful. And it's a double-edged sword, because in some respects it makes us successful. It carries a lot of energy and passion, and people are influenced by that. But in the same idea, we're leaving behind a whole possibility of who we truly are.
Yeah.
So the charismatic bit is I can influence people with this kind of personality that I can do in inverted commas. And actually the anxiety that you talk about is a call. It's almost nature has a way of correcting imbalance. It's a call to say, hang on a sec, all is not well here. There is unease in this feeling, and it's a call to reflect and rebalance what has been lost.
Yeah. And I think today, when I kind of first time started noticing something is not okay, I didn't know it was, I didn't have the word anxiety for it at the time. This is about 10 years ago. We did not talk about these things. I didn't know who to talk to about. At that time, it was like, okay, I thought this is how things are meant to be. I work for in fast-paced environment. This is what we go through. It comes with a lot of stress. That's just the normal way of living. Until 6 years later, I was like, surely this can't be a normal way of living, because 6 years later, I just really don't know what to do with myself. And so I think these kind of conversations are so important. And today we talk about them, and the topic is so important, and there is nothing wrong with it. You know, we kind of go in our lives because we want to achieve. So we go and do what we think is the right thing to do. But I think what you just said is extremely important. As soon as you feel that there is something is not right, because we feel that, right? It's something, there is some kind of dis-ease of something. That's a kind of a red flag of questioning and asking, okay, what is it that is actually asking to be heard? Well, I thought for 6 years, this was what was normal. So if I knew then, okay, there is something that is not feeling okay, let's start asking, let's start questioning, I probably could have saved myself a few years of my life. So that's why I think it's so important to have these conversations. And that's the disconnect that you're talking about between who we really are and who we think we should be in order to succeed.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
So you talk about beautiful kind of comparison. You're comparing the leadership into being an orchestra conductor. Can you explain to our audience about what would be the difference between charismatic leadership and conscious leadership? What role does the conductor play? How we look at that?
Okay. Well, there are two aspects to the metaphor, and I have a more recent one which is more evolved. But let me tell you basically what the conductor metaphor is about. The charismatic leader is sort of lost in their own idea of themselves, and the orchestral conductor, as leader of the orchestra, really is facilitating the reimagining of the music. So whereas the charismatic leader is lost in their own script, the orchestral conductor is paying homage to the genius in the script that is not theirs. And in the case of the orchestra, it's the life force of the music, the genius of the music, the genius of the composer. So that's one aspect to the metaphor. Now, there are people who will shout me down and say, hang on a sec, most orchestral conductors are complete egomaniacs. And, history tells us that there were many, and still are, self-obsessed conductors. But if we look at how orchestras are now being led, the role of the conductor as this sort of archetypal maestro male in his white tie and tails has now been superseded by, first of all, no conductor. It's just the first violinist who's leading the players. And now, more recently, a self-organizing group that doesn't have a conductor. They have no leader. Leadership is in the essence of how they show up. They can make this work without the idea of the leader. So I also talk about it in my work, the difference between leaders as people and leadership as part of our collective consciousness.
Yeah. For many people, this is probably like, what? You mean, yeah, like you mean we would not have the lead, we would not have a person to tell us what to do as well, or how to do things.
Okay. So this is, yeah. So you're very like, what? It's part of our conditioning that we have learned that there's one person responsible at the top, and it kind of starts with God-fearing religion. There's one person at the top for whom we are, the person at the top carries the power. We have no power, we have no say, and we are just passive in this power structure. And that power structure extends into the sort of the old family system, the education system, parent-child, teacher-pupil, boss-employee. All these top-down structures are part of our conditioning. So we also have to recognize this idea that this aspiration to be this great leader, this charismatic leader, is part of this idea of I am either passive in the world or I am a leader. Whereas we can challenge that power dynamic and actually go, we're all powerful. We're all powerful. There's nothing really that says that one person is any more powerful than the other. Yeah. So that is the starting point for this work, is to recognize that part of our conditioning, and it's a systemic thing as well, is that the boss knows best, the parents know best. And then where that structure is limited, is the only way we can relate to it as the non-powerful one is to either go along with the system of that relationship, compliance, being agreeable, fitting in, conforming, or resisting. So that the limits of that structure are that we can only fit in or obstruct. And this work, conscious leadership, is about the realization that we are all a life force, that we are all powerful, that we all have a big contribution to make, that we are all connected, and no one person has the autonomy on anything. Despite the fact that we carry our own uniqueness, it is a uniqueness that also belongs to the ecosystem of life.
Yeah, I love it. Ecosystem instead of the ego system. So charismatic leader, and what we are used to is obviously it's all driven by our ego. Once again, because of our past conditioning, the way that things have always, at least in our lifetime, been done. And this is where the resistance comes, right? And this is where we see the Great Resignation. So many people are questioning that disconnect between how they really feel inside, and there is that resistance of being compliant to something they no longer feel this is the right thing for me, like something is off, as we just said 5 minutes ago.
Now, of course, leadership's response to the Great Resignation is, what can we do? What have we done wrong? What is the solution to this problem? Rather than reflecting on what is at the source of the Great Resignation. What is at the source of people walking away from structures? What is the true call of this movement that we're seeing?
Yeah, absolutely. And also we talk about Great Resignation, but also great opportunity. There are also a lot of the talks about how do we reinvent this. But as you say, if we just look at it, okay, what do we have to do for people to stay? Do we give them higher salary? Do we give them bigger awards? We just, again, on the wrong track. Just the same thing in a different color, basically.
Exactly.
In here. Yeah. It's such a huge question, again, once again. So I want to kind of acknowledge that what we are talking in here is really for people that have never thought about this way of leading, this way of being together and creating together. This is many times, I think, even unimaginable, because the hierarchical system is just so ingrained in all of us. Yeah. This is such a beauty. I would love to be here in 100 years' time and see how the organizations work then. But for now, I know we are right at the beginning, and it's beautiful to be part of that kind of waking up to something new and waking up to who we really are, and just having this kind of maybe challenging for somebody, triggering conversations even.
Yeah,
that's what I think. So let's move forward a little bit, and let's talk about, so where does coaching come into this? Because you're talking about coaching style, coaching as a leadership style. So how is this linking coaching and conscious leadership? Where is that, Marine?
So, the starting point to my response is, first of all, just to be to shed some light on what coaching means to me, or in the context of this conversation. Coaching traditionally was a process where the coach helped the coachee get to where they needed to get and achieve their goals. You know, it was a goal-focused thing that came out of sports and etc. And that is still the case, and that's all fine. But what is more interesting for me is, what is it that coaches do in terms of what is the presence that coaches bring to the coaching conversation that leaders, and in fact all of us can learn from. So, you know, if we think of ICF, International Coaching Federation, core competencies, what are the competencies that make up best practice coaching? And we talk about co-creating a relationship, active listening, evoking awareness, powerful communications. All those things aren't about leadership or coaching. These are human potentialities. These are aspects to being human that are part of our treasure chest of being, which we don't use. So the thing that excites me in this work is that coaching is just a wrapper, a shop window for saying there are new ways to show up in yourself. There are better ways to relate and create relationships, workplace or other. And there are more profound ways to generate great outcomes rather than forcing the issues, which is what we tend to do generally in business. This is what I want to achieve, and this is what we will do, and it's sort of driven by a lot of force, as opposed to what happens in the coaching conversation, which is the emergence of realization, and with realization comes what is true, and what is true carries its own power. And when we realize that sort of emergence, then we can sort of bottle it and harness it and create challenge and action, etc. So the results can often be the same, but how we get there is a more profound and one could argue a more sustainable process.
Absolutely. And once again, you know, talking about coaching and conscious leadership, we keep saying the words like presence and being self-aware, which is really the foundations of creating something new, not something that is based on our past experiences, because this is how we have always done it, and that's why it has to be right, but kind of just being in a present moment without forcing anything, but collectively allowing things to kind of emerge that will then, you know, encourage us to take action. Yes,
yeah. So very good. That all of that resonates with me. So one thing I would I think this idea of presence, just to tweak this idea of self-awareness, I would just say awareness, because actually what the coach does, the embodied coach, is a sort of self-transcendence, is a sort of, I am not here, that there is no me, so there's nothing to be aware of. I suppose the closest we can get to is to talk about self-management, is that I maintain presence, I bring coaching presence, which means knowing, being aware that the conditioned mind and its ramblings are not standing in the way of what is and what is real in this dance of coaching. So the self-awareness, there's nothing for me to focus on in myself, but by maintaining presence, coaching presence, I'm aware of a knowing beyond my internal mutterings.
Absolutely. And you know, this is just so beautiful when I'm coaching and I work with high achievers. So I work with people from the corporate world, which is my background again, and it's that need of having an action plan as soon as we get on the course. Like, so what do I do? Give me 5 points so that I can correct myself, I can fix myself. And then it's just beautiful to watch through the course of our work together, to kind of detaching from that need of doing something. And yesterday I had a beautiful coaching session where the things were just coming up. This was 4th or 5th or 6th session. So we really reached that stage when it was just presence, just me kind of stepping away, and the coachee was just really there, being fully aware of what was coming up for him in such a beautiful, powerful way. It's like, okay, I don't need an action plan. I know what is it that I am craving right now, or what my next step should be. So there is such a power having that action being inspired by that knowing, instead of just let's go and do it. Just giving it that space and time to emerge is beautiful.
Yeah.
Absolutely powerful. You were talking about outcomes just now. You mentioned the word outcome. So that's another kind of difference between in a traditional or charismatic way of leading people. We are very focused on the outcomes. In conscious leadership, we talk more about purpose and coming from that place. So can we talk about outcomes versus purpose?
Okay, so these are sort of quite abstract ideas. So I'll try and be as clear as possible. I suppose the point is to be aware that we are sort of reaching out and sort of clasping for results. That has been a part of our conditioning, that somehow success is all we need, and actually we can shortcut to what we need, which, for example, in the case of a business, bottom line profit. What is our most efficient formulaic way to get to our super objective, which is bottom line profit? So that's a kind of forcing the outcome idea. And how are we going to incentivize people just to get to that outcome? Versus an understanding, a more deeper knowing that outcomes are secondary. They are only a manifestation of presence, purpose, creativity, something sort of beyond our control, actually. And there is a lack of trust that if we let go to those more fundamental aspects of being human, that we're all going to just sort of fall away and evaporate into nothing.
And it's going to all fall apart.
And it will all fall apart, exactly.
Yeah.
So that fear of it all falling apart means, listen, there's no time for this letting go stuff.
Yeah.
We need to get results. So now, this is not to say that structure and challenge and action aren't all part of that, but they are secondary. They are the icing on the cake to something that doesn't have process, is a formlessness. You need this balance of formlessness, which is about building trust, which is about presence, which is about alignment, which is about sensing, emergence. The conscious leader is attuned to all of those things, and the more attuned everyone becomes to them, the more alignment is realized, and then the outcomes ensue.
Yeah.
But that requires letting go and some courage.
A lot of courage. Yeah. Because that's that grasping of everything that is known, everything that is kind of secure, everything that is, as I said before, coming from the past. That's what we know, right? So letting go of that, again, it's one of the ideas that might be triggering a lot of people. And here, letting go does not mean not caring. I think that's important to kind of distinguish. It's not that we don't care. On the contrary, we really do, but it's just allowing things to emerge. That's that kind of letting go. When I first heard the word let go, when I started working with my coach, it's like, what do you mean? What are you talking about? It can't, because that's not going to work.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a process of not even understanding, it's intellectually can't be understood. It's really allowing and trusting.
Well, it's a sort of unlearning,
Yeah.
recognizing, if we talk about learned behaviors, learned thinking, which is our conditioning,
Yeah.
As soon as we become aware of it, that it's not who we are,
yeah.
It's just something we do because of experience and the way we're sort of wired.
Yeah.
When we recognize it and soften I don't like the word separate, because it still is part of who we are, but soften our attachment to it, and realize there's a lot more to us, then one starts to trust oneself. And when one trusts oneself, other people start to trust. This whole thing of trust in our world, so important and yet so elusive. Why is that?
Yeah.
It's not that we're all horrible people. Why is trust elusive? Because we aren't trusting, relaxing in the wholeness of ourselves. We're holding on the sort of hard edge that resonates or doesn't resonate with others.
Yeah, absolutely. So in practical terms, let's say we have got somebody watching this and they would love to kind of dive deeper, or they would love to understand more, start implementing more. What would be like a kind of maybe a little toolkit that would maybe encourage them to start exploring of being a conscious leader? Where do they start?
Well, I mean, there are numerous practices, training, coaching, teaching, private self-inquiry. There are numerous spaces that one can do this work. But I think the sort of the pillars of this work in terms of what does one need to do, or what does this self-inquiry look like? The starting point is, who am I before the content of my experience? Like if I take away all the stories, all the thoughts, all the assumptions, all the judgments, all the hopes, all the content of my experience, if I take all of that away, where is my sense of being? That is the starting point. And then I call it the empty vessel of authenticity. In other words, we are present and open, but unscripted. And actually, that is when we are most authentic. Authenticity is misconstrued. Authenticity doesn't mean telling you all my private stories. I had this argument with my partner this weekend, and I've got this illness, and you want to hear about this, and that's not what authenticity is. People think it's about bringing emotional stories to work. Authenticity is about being unscripted, being present and unscripted. And then one's true nature, being human, shines, and how there's no doubt.
Yeah. I also loved when we're talking about the tools, the one particularly that you mentioned, and I really loved that one, was to do the brainstorming around questions, asking open questions. So asking open questions is a big part of coaching, as we know, so that there is nothing forced. We are not leading anything anywhere, but we are opening that space through open question, opening the space for what's coming up. And I love that because, again, we are so used to doing the brainstorm around ideas, and let's put the ideas on the table. How can we drive the results? So instead of that kind of taking, and let's do the brainstorm around what questions can we ask, so that the solution that we want to take emerges from those questions. Because if we just brainstorm the ideas, once again, it's going to be same old ideas, probably, that are influenced by our past experience. But when we start asking different questions or open questions, more stuff will start emerging.
Exactly. That's very well explained. So the leader's anxiety, and it's a sort of human anxiety, is the need to know, because we think that when we know, we will be in control, and actually we don't know. But again, part of our conditioning, not knowing denotes uncertainty, emptiness, lack of decisiveness, all those things. So the open question has no answer per se, but it's an invitation to possibility. And again, there's a life force, an energy about being creative, and creating a space where there aren't any answers is a safer space, because we don't feel under pressure, and it taps into our more fundamental power, which is creativity, curiosity, compassion, generating something new.
Yeah. So, Julian, you do work with CEOs. You also work with your partner, Mimi, with the government of Canada to kind of bring conscious leadership to real life, to really kind of execute on it and bring it to people and to leaders. So when I am personally very curious, so when you do have the request to come and teach conscious leadership or coaching as a leadership style, what people ask you, like what is the brief? What do they want from you?
Oh, well, I don't know.
Because this, the conscious leadership and all these ideas we're talking about, as I said, they are so different, so new. So like, how do people even find out what can they get out of teaching conscious leadership, changing that whole leadership style? What do they want from you? What is the objective when you go and work with somebody?
I mean, the specific objectives might be very different, but let me say something. Let me make a sort of give you a broader response to the question, because I don't actually know specifically what people want, but I think it's no coincidence that there is a sort of a mass movement towards coaching.
Yeah,
being a coach. There's a curiosity, a fascination. When I also teach in a business school, and when you teach coaching skills, people get very excited. Now, this is not only because they think, oh, I could become a coach. I think there's something more profound going on, which is this draw to a new level of consciousness that is driven by a sense that where we are now could be better. So that when I, in a training program, in a development program, in a business school, when I'm being told, gosh, there are different levels of listening awareness. Like, actually, I'm now aware. I listen to everything just through the lens of my own story, and I don't have to do that, and that's very liberating.
Yeah.
So I think people, perhaps without even knowing it, are drawn to the world of coaching because it liberates them from a sort of quasi-tyranny that the world of corporate life has created. Yeah, beautiful. Absolutely. Again, creating that space, right? That kind of non-judgmental environment where you can just be. Without worrying that you're going to be punished in a way. I'm not saying physically punished, but there will be consequences because you say something wrong or because you do something wrong. Yeah. And also, just to be clear, being in a liberated space does not mean to say that great things won't happen. This is not zoning out. If anything, this is leaning in to what is really happening, and becoming attuned to what really could be great.
Yeah. I love it.
That's from that. So the great things, great results, and real success.
Yeah. I love it. This topic really makes me go in. I could be talking about this for a very long time. And yeah, as you say, coaching is just such a beautiful way of moving forward in discovering who we are as human beings, not human doings, but human beings. That is just beautiful space to be in. Yeah. Julian, we are over. Basically, our time is over. Where can people find you? Where can they learn more about you and what you do and what you have to offer?
Sure. So I'm on LinkedIn at Julian Saipe. My website is jaa.world.
I'll put it up into the post, yeah. Okay. And do you also do the leadership courses? Is this for companies only, or is this for individuals if they want to take part as well? Or
so I coach privately. I coach teams. I coach within organizations. The leadership development program I run with Mimi Moore in Canada is on my website. Typically, we have newly appointed directors, heads of departments. But as hopefully it's clear from this work, anyone and everyone is welcome.
Yeah.
This is not for any particular type of person or work. It's just something about growing as an individual in relation to yourself and other people.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Perfect. Thank you so very much once again. I am very much looking forward to putting this out there and staying in touch, Julian, and maybe one day just knocking on your door and say, can I learn more from you once again? Thank you once again. Yeah, you have a great rest of the day. Thank you so much.